This leads to a kind of choice. The Spanish have a choice like the French in 1981. Are they going to go down a socialist road, an economic nationalist road, and try to get the economy kind of sorted before they go into Europe? Or are they just going to go into Europe and adopt a neoliberal approach? Now, we all know, retrospectively, they took the neoliberal approach. They did so under a socialist government, which is obviously an indication of the complexity of this, but also the challenge of the time. I mean, you know, could they have done anything different? I don't know. But Spain integrated into the EU just as the EU was becoming much more liberal. It entered just at the start of the single market project, and Spain was not equipped to compete. So what you get in Spain is this massive industrial crisis, which really hits in the 1980s. You get a third of the manufacturing jobs are lost. And you get 20% unemployment. 20% unemployment for years. For years. Now Europe is it's seen a little bit like Italy. Europe's seen as a positive force. It's bringing regional aid, foreign investment, modernising pressure, discipline, etc. But if you've got that size of unemployment, it's really hard to create that number of jobs. So the Spanish, having started down this track of choosing to integrate in Europe and take a liberal approach to their economy, they kind of have to follow it to its logical conclusion. And they start to deregulate their labour market. So what we see in Spain is really a contrast between a very tight economic nationalist policy under Franco, slight liberalisation in the 60s, but actually still a very state-driven development project. And then a choice that's made in the 80s to go to a very hell-for-leather liberal model, rather than try and wait and build a stronger Spain and then go into Europe. They go into Europe too quickly, they're not ready, big unemployment problem, they can't generate enough jobs, they have to deregulate the labour market. So in Spain you get quite an aggressive neoliberal policy. Italy doesn't do this, Spain does. An aggressive neoliberal policy which is really continued consistently through from 1980 odd till the early 2000s, really 2 decades of quite a lot of neoliberal reform. Under both parties, privatisation, deregulation, and the reason they take this choice is clear. They prefer Europe and to join Europe quickly and to modernise and westernise than to staying out. And this means that it's the Franco model has got to be abandoned. You know, they're trying to abandon completely the Franco model. And they throw out the bathwater of development policy with the baby of economic nationalism. So they lose all control, and they have to just keep deregulating. Now, funnily enough, this seems to be working, because just before the financial crash, of course, Spain's public finances are in a good state, and unemployment is very low. They've created all the jobs, there's huge low-wage economy in Spain, lots of construction, tourism, black economy, all sorts of reasons, but the unemployment drops, massively. There's really successful. And then, of course, what happens is the financial crisis destroys it all, and takes us back to the position that they were in the late 80s, early 90s, with mass unemployment. So it's a paradoxical thing with Spain. They built their welfare state only to have to reform it pretty quickly. They were just building it and they started to sort of U-turn and undo it. There's some similarities with France in terms of an attempt to engineer a state-led model, but it's closer. Spain is between France and Italy. In terms of it's a little bit more kind of organised than the Italian model, but in the end it's not in the same class as the French in terms of an effective model of development run by the state. And that means it's weaker, it's reformed quicker, and of course we know it's kind of in a bit of a neoliberal mess now. Over-dependent on tourism and finance, they've lost a bit too much of their industry, and it's very globalised. Spain is a very globalised model. It's moved in a very majorly neoliberal direction, but with some Spanish characteristics. I mean, it's still Spain.